A Neighbor's Choice is live, and I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski. So glad to be with you again for hour 2 of our live program, coming to you on FM and AM on our website, aneighborschoice.com. And now we're going to get into one of our favorite topics, nutrition. We want to get into things that can fix and help your life be improved dramatically through small little changes you do. It's beautiful. It's glorious. You can't change everything overnight about what's going on in Timbuktu or wherever you're supposed to be drawing your attention to on the world stage. Russia's got a new nuclear weapon, they say. My goodness, it's 12 times more powerful than Hiroshima. Well, you know what? We can't change everything in our own power, but we can change little things that can be a huge, huge help in ways we don't even realize. So joining me to talk about this is our good friend, nutrition researcher, Tucker Goodrich. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, David. How are you?
I'm doing well. I mean, I'm just really thrilled to hear what's happening, with DeSantis's announcement that he's going to do a grand jury. And I don't want to get my hopes up. They say, you don't know what's going to happen. But just the fact that it's happened, is a great move of the Overton window towards hopefully more responsibility from these federal agencies that come up with pseudoscience stuff and shove it down people's throats. And then some of these companies that make money off of dubious products that haven't been properly vetted before they're pushed into people's lives and to the point of losing their jobs and careers.
Well, good on you for nudging him in that direction. It's certainly something that we need to take a long, hard look at because there's so much malfeasance on so many different sides going through the pandemic.
Yeah, and it's, there's so much to it, and people get overwhelmed with it. It's like drinking from a fire hydrant, when it bursts out and you're trying to get a drink. My goodness, that's hard, right? There's so much stuff, so many different science papers, and it's so much disinformation campaigns out there, including fake news on, folks that come up with conspiracy theories that are not accurate, that it can all be very confusing. But one of the things I like about what we talk about is that if you get your nutrition right and you really stay at it and you get good fresh air and good restful sleep, you can fight off a lot of these different health effects pretty solidly on a good ground. If you're young enough and healthy enough, you can really make a big impact in things in your own life, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't say if you're young enough. We've talked before about my experience with my father at the end of his life. And he saw a significant increase in his well-being in a very short period of time, putting his diabetes into remission in a couple of months and losing a lot of body weight without trying to, complaining to me about the fact that his pants didn't fit him anymore and he had to go buy new pants. If you're doing the right approach, it's not that difficult, I think, although it's certainly not a snap of the fingers. But also, I think if you're not doing the right approach, then it's going to be pretty darn near impossible to resolve it.
Let me ask you a question. Someone asked me this, listener, and then we'll get into some more topics with you, but I wanted to make sure I could get this with you. So basically the question was, to summarize, if you have been clearing out seed oils out of your life, you're not eating the soybean oil, the canola, you're looking out for restaurant foods cooked in that stuff and avoiding it, you're checking the labels, you're avoiding the sunflower, the safflower, all these different oils, and you're really meticulous at this, and you have been doing this for some time, but you do different dietary changes. Maybe you eat more carbs, more this or that, and you gain weight and gain weight and gain, let's say you gain a lot of weight or a little bit of weight. When you're gaining that excess weight after you've long stopped eating the vegetable oil products, is there something in the way the seed oils affect your body's metabolism? Even let's say you've stopped them cold turkey completely pretty much for 6 months, a year, but you're gaining, maybe you've gained a lot of weight because you've been eating a lot of sugar or whatever. Is that turning into PUFA fat or seed oil fat? Is that contributing to the problem, or is that weight gain different from the weight gain you gained when you were eating the seed oil rich foods? Does that question make sense? And would you have an answer?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, somebody in that situation is likely somebody who's suffered a lot of metabolic damage to their body. My first recommendation right off the bat would be that you need to go on that person would need to go on a low carbohydrate diet also, right? Mm-hmm. Because one of the most obvious effects of seed oil consumption is it breaks your ability to process carbohydrates correctly, right? It makes you insulin resistant. Insulin resistance means that your body produces more insulin. Excess insulin in the context of weight loss is often a factor because insulin prevents your body from burning fat. And if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates and your body isn't able to regulate carbohydrate metabolism the way it's supposed to, that you are going to be, you're going to be packing that carbohydrates away as fat, and it's while you're not burning fat. And that is obviously a recipe for increased fat accumulation, weight gain. I hate saying weight gain because some people go to the gym and they gain weight, right? And that's the good kind of weight gain. But obviously the problem we're talking here about is fat accumulation. So I think in that case, you need to recognize, even though carbohydrates don't cause weight gain on their own, there are lots of populations in the world, and there have been lots, just about every single animal study that looks at how to make animals gain weight. It's a combination of seed oils and sugar that does the trick, right? Starches and carbohydrates alone don't do it. And generally, even a high starch and high sugar diet on the control arm is what they're using as the non-obesogenic control diet, right? And we've seen that even in primates. They did a famous study. I can't remember off the top of my head the two places where it was done, but it was a longevity study in rhesus monkeys, and it lasted, for decades. And the two groups didn't talk to each other, oddly enough, and they fed two different types of diets to the two different groups of monkeys, one of which was a highly processed diet, and the other was a less processed diet, but still pretty highly processed, that included a lot of wheat starch. And both groups of monkeys got ill, but in different ways, right? And the group of monkeys on the highly processed diet, which most of their fat came from corn oil and they got a lot of sugar, were the only side that gained weight. The other side didn't become obese, although they had other health problems from the wheat consumption. But they were eating a lot of starch. So, starch alone in humans, as we've talked about before, doesn't seem to cause obesity. There are lots of populations that eat high starchy diets, or did before, the modern industrial diet came along, and obesity was rare everywhere.
Yeah. And so just to clarify, so if someone has stopped those things cold turkey, seed oils, for 6, 7 months, a year, whatever, a long period of time, but they're eating copious amounts of sugar and carbs, is that still going to be, is that kind of overweight gain, is that going to be as problematic as seed oil weight gain, or is it all the same after your body has been damaged metabolically by these vegetable oils?
Oh, you're saying is that weight gain going to be healthier or less healthy?
Yeah, like is it, because it's like is that seed oil, is your, just to kind of reiterate what's happening in the body, is the body going to convert that into the same kind of toxic rancid type fats that
No,
the seed oil foods directly cause the body to create? Or once you stop them, but you say you've stopped them for a year and you gain 20-30 pounds, is that gain going to be the same damaged, toxic, rancid seed oil weight gain, or will it be a different kind of less dangerous, less unhealthy weight gain, even though weight gain in general at that point would not be preferable?
Well, okay. Your body can't make the fats that are found in seed oils on its own, right? You have to eat them. So it can't turn starch or sugar or anything else into omega-6 fats like what are found in seed oils. So no, you're definitely not. It also can't make omega-3 fats, the beneficial fats that are found in, pastured meats and fish, for instance. You have to consume either one of those. So yeah, you're definitely not going to be getting that effect. The first thing, and unfortunately, you're asking me a question that I've never seen a study looking at. I've seen a couple of studies where they've taken two groups of people who are already overweight and they put them on a diet that keeps them overweight, and they cut down on the seed oils on one side, and that side got healthier in terms of their fatty liver got better, their insulin resistance got better, their cardiovascular disease risk markers all got better. So yeah, I think it's, to some extent, yeah, that's probably happening. It's just kind of hard to find people this is in that situation outside of a laboratory environment, right? Because it's just,
But it's an interesting thought experiment, right? Because we kind of want to know what's really going on with all these different factors. And
right.
You're saying you don't know enough studies to suggest what that actually might be.
Yeah, I've only seen, I think, one study that did that sort of experiment, and the folks who were on the low omega-6 wing did get healthier, even though, by the design of the study, they were trying to keep their weight stable. They unfortunately didn't say anything about, did they have to eat more calories? How did they keep their weight stable? They just said that they kept their weight stable, and that was part of the design of the diet that they used.
Well, very good. I wanted to turn to another subject. You had mentioned to me the ADA. You wanted to talk a little bit about the ADA. What is the ADA, and what is going on with the ADA?
Well, so the ADA is the American Diabetes Association. They're the folks who are responsible for coming up with the standards of care in diabetes, right? All the instructions that a doctor is supposed to be following to treat your diabetes and what they call manage your diabetes, right? I haven't read, there are 17 sections and then 4 other sections that are not numbered. The one that I looked at immediately was what their guidelines for obesity were. In the news story that I saw, they never even mentioned the word diet in treating diabetes, which absolutely blew my mind. And then when you go in and you look at how they are recommending that you treat obesity, they talk a lot about diet and lifestyle management, but the approach that they're recommending, to my astonishment, given that it's 2023, is the same old failed approach that they've been recommending for decades. It's, it's eat less, move more, cut your calories, all the stuff that we know doesn't work and that there's an enormous amount of evidence for it not working. but they continue to recommend it. Except they recommend diet, and then they acknowledge that it doesn't really work and that everybody who tries it and loses weight gains it back, right? So then they move on to, of course, the moneymakers. And I'm trying not to be too cynical here, but it's kind of hard not to be. They never mention any of the successful non-calorie restriction protocols that have been tried and succeeded in diabetes, right? Not even a peep about that, like Virta Health. They never mention any of the researchers who were involved in that project. They never mention a low-carb diet at all for the treatment of diabetes. And again, diabetes is a treatment of carbohydrate intolerance, right? And poor carbohydrate processing in your body. That is the definition of the disease of type 2 diabetes. But they do recommend a bunch of drugs, and then they also recommend that you go and get weight loss surgery. Well, it turns out that if you get weight loss surgery, then one of the problems that you have is that if you eat too many carbohydrates, you get sick. So after you've had weight loss surgery, then they recommend that you go on a low carbohydrate diet to treat the negative effects of the weight loss surgery. And I have to say that what they describe as the effects of weight loss surgery, which is lifelong, which may not be very long, although they claim that it extends life. Things that happen after you have weight loss surgery. There's dumping syndrome, right? Dumping syndrome is when you eat stuff and your body can't process it because, of course, they've cut most of your stomach out and, rerouted in your small intestines. So it just goes flying right through you. Then there's what they call, it's basically a hypoglycemia because your body detects all this carbohydrate coming into the body. And so it stimulates a lot of insulin production. And then that causes hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is very harmful. It's more harmful, actually, than high blood sugar, right? Having your blood sugar go too low causes more damage than causing your blood sugar too high. And apparently it's quite common after you have the surgery that you will have that for the rest of your life, right? Then they talk about the failure rate, which is 35 to 50% of this weight loss surgery. Absolutely blows my mind that they would even talk about this stuff. And nevertheless, never mention a low carbohydrate diet for the treatment of diabetes. Not a peep. And what's most amazing is that the lead author on this study works at the Joslin Center for Diabetes at Harvard University, named for the man who invented the low carbohydrate diet for the treatment of diabetes back in the 1920s and 30s.
And who is that man?
Joslin. Joslin.
Wow. So did they talk about vegetable oils in this?
They don't talk about, David, anything that might be useful. They do mention that, and this, after they talk about how badly their dietary recommendations do, they then notice that there are virtually no weight loss centers that offer anything that they agree with as, weight loss centers meaning for profit, even a doctor needs to make a profit, that there are virtually no weight loss centers that offer things that are concordant with the guidelines released by the ADA, the American Heart Association, and the American College of Cardiology. I guess because it works so badly, right? I mean, I know of obesity centers that use a low-carb diet. I know of a number of doctors who've made a career out of this, and they're very successful doing it. But I guess just like the ADA has figured out that their dietary recommendations work so poorly that they spend very little time talking about them, actually, right? Mm-hmm. So a disease that has become pandemic all around the world, in the course of us changing our diet to one that, contains a lot of seed oils and a lot of processed foods, has caused massive amounts of obesity and diabetes in the world. And they never even mentioned just, the simple idea of, hey, what if we went back to what we ate before? Right? Which is all any of these, the low carb doctors, they're cutting carbohydrates, yes, which isn't necessarily necessary. But by doing that, you're cutting out all the processed foods and all the seed oil consumption that comes along with processed foods.
Well, not all of them, but a lot of them, right? You're talking about with the low carb?
Right. And the worst ones, right? The ones, the ones that are sitting on the shelf for 6 months, a bag of chips that's been sitting there, those are the ones that are going to be the most rancid and oxidized. And we know that those are the most harmful ones for your health.
By the way, is palm oil, that's not a seed oil, but does that go rancid if it sits on the shelf a lot? Because I know a lot of processed foods use palm oil.
Palm oil is mostly saturated fat. It does have a bit more of the omega-6 fats than I would like to see, but it's definitely one of the healthier ones, one of the healthier options.
So if someone's diabetic or pre-diabetic and they got to cut out one thing absolutely, completely first, is it the carbs and sugar or the seed oils?
I would say the first thing they should cut out is the carbs and the sugar, and then a moment later they need to cut out the seed oils, right? Because their body is unable to process carbs and sugar, but that problem is caused by the seed oils that they're consuming.
One of the annoying things about the keto craze is there's a lot of, keto snacks and, alternative junk food and stuff that solves the carb thing, but then adds in like vegetable oils, which is frustrating, when you get people who are ready to, get their diabetes under control, and then you look at the packaging and it's got seed oils they're sneaking in, and they don't know any better, but, I guess they don't. They should know better.
Well, some guy wrote a book about that, and he talked about how he tried to use healthy fats by my definition of healthy fats, meaning animal fats and largely saturated, monounsaturated, and the regulators came down on him. I mean, you can't claim a health benefit if your food goes against the dietary guidelines, right? And the dietary guidelines are to cut your saturated fat and increase your consumption of seed oils.
So you're saying that they can't market the thing as a diet food if they don't put in those seed oils?
They can't market it. They can't make any health claims for it, right?
Is that why the candies use palm oil so much? Because they're not marketing themselves as a healthy alternative, so they just use a fat that's supposedly bad when it's actually not that bad?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
It's so funny how that is. That's so ironic. Tucker, it's so great having you on. I hope we covered as much as we could with what you wanted to get out there.
The point I wanted, the point that it's really important for your listeners to come away with is that based on the standard of care for diabetes, if they're looking to put it into remission, they're on their own. They're not going to get any help from a doctor who's following these guidelines.
Well, that's sober news, but it's also good news if you're aware of what we've been explaining on this program, right? If you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, nutritionally, the scientific data seems to suggest avoid these vegetable oils completely, and going in a low-carb direction is going to help a lot with that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Tucker, thank you for coming on, and Merry Christmas in this Christmas season, and we'll talk to you soon.
Merry Christmas, David. Thanks for having me on.
Very good. And also check out Tucker Goodrich on YouTube. Check out his channel there, subscribe, and go to his blog, yelling-stop.blogspot.com.